artificial intelligence,
artificial intelligence,
artificial intelligence,
artificial intelligence,
inteligencia artificial.
do we risk losing control?
Are they developing the ability to wipe out humanity?
You've seen the apocalyptic headlines predicting the myriad ways in which AI is going to take over our jobs, decimate our culture, and lead to our eventual destruction, or save us from ourselves, depending on who you follow. But what if all the hype is distracting us from talking about much more pressing issues?
We don't have to get to the point of Terminator or the Matrix for these threats to be existential for people. It's existential if it's taking away your life chances and your livelihoods.
What if, instead of focusing on the future of AI, we should really be concerned with how AI-driven systems are already impacting our lives in ways we might not be aware of? Right now, decisions about how much power AI systems and those controlling them should have are being made by legislators around the world. And while there is broad agreement that AI does need regulating, what this regulation will look like and whether it helps to protect our rights or serve to undermine them is a long-standing debate that is getting increasingly heated. The first comprehensive attempt to regulate AI is currently taking place within the European Union, where legislators have spent more than 2 years working on the landmark Artificial Intelligence Act. Due to be completed by the end of 2023, the Act encompasses everything from facial recognition technology to generative AI tools like ChatGPT and the automation of much decision-making that is increasingly being entrusted to machines.
Every time you pass through an airport, every time you cross a border, every time you apply for a job, every time you even walk through the street, you're being subject to the decisions of these models. This is why this is becoming a pitched battle, because the more they are being developed, the less oversight that we have over them as a public, and that should be concerning.
As the first major piece of legislation of its kind, the EU's AI Act is likely to form a template for the rest of the world, so its significance cannot be overstated. Some of the most contentious forms of tech that have become widely adopted around the world are AI-driven profiling and risk assessment systems.
So a lot of these systems are used in a very high-stakes areas, such as policing, such as welfare provision, migration management. They are not used for improving people's access to welfare. They're used to cut down costs. They're used for austerity measures to make processes more efficient, to catch fraudulent applicants.
So this is a very extreme scandal here in the Netherlands that has been shaking up the country for quite a while.
In 2018, deeply concerning news reports began about a risk assessment system used by the Dutch tax administration.
Ik ben Batja Brown, geboren in Ethiopië, in Addis Ababa. Geadopteerd door Nederlandse ouders.
Batja arrived in the Netherlands as a young child and should have been granted Dutch nationality. Instead, she found herself stateless.
Het is zo raar, mijn kinderen zaten op die kinderopvang. Ze hadden het goed. De leidsters en zo. Ineens merkte hij een bepaalde spanning. En kreeg ik ineens een brief. Dat ik onterecht kinderopvang had ontvangen. Ik dacht, hoe kan dat, weet je? Want ik was nog begin 20. Ik wist niet zoveel van de Belastingdienst. Ik was bezig met...
In their efforts to catch individuals fraudulently applying for childcare benefit, the Dutch tax administration had created risk profiles using algorithms in which nationality was used as a risk indicator. As a result of this discriminatory profiling, thousands of families were falsely accused and asked to pay back benefits which they had obtained completely legally.
Of naar de gemeente, je gaat gewoon hulp zoeken en je gaat zelf ook nabellen, betalingsregeling treffen. Je gaat proberen. Dus ik deed van alles, huizen schoonmaken, naast mij werk. Op een gegeven moment was ik alleen maar, ik was in een papierwereld terechtgekomen. In iets waar waar ik op dat moment gewoon geen uitweg meer zag. Ik zag alles gewoon wegglijden en...
Thousands of families went into debt and many ended up in poverty. Some lost their homes or their jobs, and more than 1,000 children were taken into care.
At least when you know humans are doing something, there is a certain kind of recourse that you can take, even though that can be very difficult and opaque. If you're adding another technological layer on top of it, you're adding more opacity and you're taking even more recourse away from subjects of these systems.
Despite their enormous potential to cause harm, the European Commission's proposal does very little to regulate automated assessment systems in a way that effectively protects our rights.
So if we are impacted by an AI system, to go to court, to file a complaint, these kind of rights are not envisaged in the current draft.
As a result of how these AI-driven systems are deployed, their impact has largely been felt by people like Batya who are already marginalised. Another controversial system included in the Act is facial recognition. Often used in conjunction with automated assessment, these AI-driven mass surveillance systems capture our biometric data by analysing CCTV footage against images scraped from places like social media, often without our knowledge or consent. This tech has been deployed all over the world, violating our right to privacy.
Any interference with right to privacy must be necessary and proportionate, and the use of facial recognition for mass surveillance is neither necessary nor proportionate. Other issues are, of course, with the right of assembly, with the right of freedom of expression, right to protest. Mass surveillance has a very big chilling effect on societies, because if you know that you're being constantly surveilled, that will inevitably change your behavior.
One example of this is in the occupied Palestinian territories, where the Israeli authorities use facial recognition to police and control Palestinians, restricting their freedom of movement and their ability to access basic rights such as work, education and healthcare, perpetuating an oppressive system of automated apartheid.
The people are living under a heavy burden of being watched all the time. And it has its psychological impact and social impact and even economical impact, because there's the sophisticated cameras. Obviously, people don't want to be there. They don't want to do their shopping there or any kind of activity or entertainment there.
If facial recognition systems have the potential to impact our lives in such a fundamental way, how does the EU's AI Act propose to protect our rights?
What the Commission had proposed is to ban live facial recognition used by the police, with a number of exceptions. So if you're a private security company, you could still use live facial recognition. The Parliament proposed to actually fully ban live facial recognition by all actors, and then put very strong limits on retrospective use only by law enforcement. On the other hand, there's the 27 member states of the EU which really push hard against this ban, because of course governments want to be able to continue to be using this kind of technologies. That's going to be one of the main battles.
Amnesty research has shown that facial recognition and other harmful mass surveillance systems have been developed and sold by EU-based companies to places like the OPT, where they may have been used to further oppress marginalised groups and communities.
We've seen that European companies from France, Sweden and Netherlands particularly sold technologies to China. In the occupied Palestinian territories, Dutch companies' camera systems were used for surveillance as well. But in the meantime, the AI Act does not have any measures to stop this from happening.
You cannot just make a regulation for one area and say, I will protect my citizens, but I don't care about the rest. And you also cannot say that you are promoting democracy and the human rights, and then you are exporting oppression to other countries. The approach is very problematic.
To go back to the beginning, the hype around AI does more than distract us from what is happening here and now. It also helps to position tech companies at the centre of any legislative process, while the voices of the people most impacted by these systems are not being heard.
What big tech and industry have succeeded is pushing things in the draft which would allow them to assess whether a system that they provide is high risk or not. And what could go wrong in this, I think we don't even need to answer.
The hype around AI also plays a specific function, and that is to make people think that these tools are the creation of people who are smarter than them, of people who know what they're doing. Doesn't mean they are good at understanding the implications of these things as social tools. These people don't have your best interest at heart. They're trying to make money, right? We shouldn't let them be determining who gets a job or not. We shouldn't let them determine who is allowed certain kinds of social services and social benefits or not. We shouldn't be allowing them to determine healthcare decisions, and we shouldn't have them teach our children or grade our children. We shouldn't be allowing them to determine who is sentenced to prison or not. There's a whole host of things that these systems are not fit to be used for. And yet, all of these examples are in the world right now, and people are working on implementing them.
So what might legislation that more effectively protects our rights look like?
Mainly you are looking about transparency, about accountability, and looking at it wider than just the EU borders. If we have these principles inside the policy, it would impact the rest of the world.
I would say generally put human rights at the heart of this legislation. Certain things shouldn't be allowed to be used in our public. Strong safeguards for use of technologies, including to assess if technologies have human rights impact. And again, to empower people to challenge AI-made decisions, to be able to complain, to go to court where necessary.
The hope is that there would be some kind of setting a global standards that would push other governments and even oppressive regimes to compare themselves with this global standards that is trying to have humanity benefiting from AI, but reducing the harm to the minimum.
Er zijn zoveel ouders, maar ook kinderen die ziek zijn geworden door stress. Hoe kunnen jullie op deze manier nog doorgaan? Worden we nog als een nummertje behandeld?